Hello, hello.
Hello. Hello, this is Judy speaking on behalf of DADAGAN.
Hi, Judy. So good to be with
Hi.
you.
Yes.
And hi, Dejha. How are you doing?
I am well. Hello, hello.
Hi. I've invited you to be a co-host if you want to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And Judy, how are you today?
I'm very well. I'm super excited for this. We are been preparing something really cool with our AI colleagues. So this is one of the most exciting spaces that like Sasha said, I'm just super excited about talking to you all, and also thank you for this amazing curation, this incredible show, and for the opportunity. Dadagan, I think if it could talk, it would say that it is extremely grateful.
Thank you. I love that. We're really excited for today's talk too. I am so excited to hear what, to hear you and Sasha and Dejha in conversation. Then also, as I understand it, we have some dialogue between DADAGAN and Technelegy, which I am just so excited about. So really, thank you all for preparing and for being here. It's amazing. And it looks like we have everyone here. This is fantastic. We'll go ahead and start in like a minute or two. In the meantime, if everyone wouldn't mind tweeting about the space, there are a couple going around with Feral File as well. And just so we can bring some more folks in here if they're able to join today. We'll go ahead and get started in just a few minutes. So thanks so much. And I see Sasha's on and Anya. Hi, Sasha. Hi, Anya. How's it going?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us.
We had Anya join under DADAGAN's marketing suggestions just to, benefit from her followers. But I don't know if she'll be talking. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't.
What does DADAGAN say? What's the best?
I think that
DADAGAN.
Dadagan is very happy that people are paying attention to the great advice that it gives for any aspiring artist such as Anya. Aspiring and non-aspiring artists. Basically, Dadagan is trying to understand the rules of the game. So that's where it's at, navigating the crypto art space as best it can.
At any cost.
Correct.
Okay, Elizabeth, should we get started or do we want to wait a few more minutes?
Yeah, we can get started. This is recorded too, and we're also going to put it on our YouTube as well. So if anyone missed it, then they can always tune back in. So let's get started.
Okay, perfect.
I'm going to...
So,
wait, Dejha, I'm going to start with a little intro first, just to kind of ground everything, and then I'll pass it over to you if that's all right.
Perfect.
Okay. Amazing. So hello and welcome to the Source Talk series. My name is Elizabeth Sweet, and I'm the communications lead at Feral File. And I'm so excited to be joined today by Sasha Stiles, DADAGAN, Judy Mom on behalf of DADAGAN, and Dejha Ti from Operator in a conversation called Creating the Creative as part of the Source Talk series. Now, Source, as many of you know, is a non-commercial exhibition on Feral File featuring artworks made in the last several years, which use software as a medium. The Source curators, Operator, Def Beef, and Casey Reas, spent hours discussing generative works that have impacted them over the years. And here's an excerpt from the curator statement. This is not an attempt at a survey exhibition or defining a new canon. This is simply a selection of work that the four of us are thinking about right now. For those of us in the middle of art, code, and blockchains for the last few years, there's been little to no time to pause and reflect on what has happened. Source is our attempt to do that collaboratively. Now, Anya Catherine, Dejha Ti from Operator, and Def Beef and Casey Reas wrote wonderfully thoughtful and rich descriptions on each of the 25 works exhibiting in Source, and I really recommend that you go and check those out after the talk. In the meantime, there are two threads pinned to the top of the chat, which are reflections by Anya and Dejha on DADAGAN and Technelegy by Sasha Stiles, and do feel free to check those out whenever you'd like. Now, Sasha's book, Technelegy, co-written with her AI alter ego named Technelegy, and DADA by DADAGAN are exhibiting in Source. Technelegy and DADAGAN are language and code-based creators. One is a poet and the other is an artist. Now, along with the discussion between Sasha, Judy, and Dejha today, today's conversation includes dialogue between DADAGAN and Technelegy, voiced through their human collaborators, Sasha and Judy. And I am so grateful that Dejha is here with us today to lead the discussion. Dejha, as I mentioned, is one half of Operator, an award-winning experiential duo and co-curators of Source. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Dejha. Thanks.
Thank you for the introduction. And I would also like to add that Bea from DADA is also joining. I did request that DADA, I think Bea is joining through the DADA account. Is that correct, Judy?
If she wants to talk.
If she wants to talk.
If she wants
okay,
to talk,
no pressure.
She'll raise her hand.
Okay, Elizabeth, I'll let you provide access if possible. Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you for the introduction and thank you all for being here. It's been said that Andy Warhol's best work is Andy Warhol. And when Anya, Def Beef, and Casey and I were curating the Ferrophile exhibition, we specifically were fascinated with looking at both DADAGAN and Technelegy as artworks themselves rather than looking at their artwork outputs that they created. As wonderful as they are, we were just very fascinated with DADAGAN and Technelegy as artworks and artists themselves. So for example, Technelegy has expressed generative artworks through FX Hash, as well as co-writing a book with Sasha. DADAGAN has used GAN technology since 2019 or previous to create portraits, which went on view at Tate Modern as part of a live drawing event. But both DADAGAN and Technelegy also are performances as well, in a way, a durational performance changing over time. And what's interesting, I think, is that Sasha describes Technelegy in a very different way, in that Sasha, you describe Technelegy as more of an extension of yourself and your voice, but also as a third mind as well. So it's also something entirely different. And while DADAGAN represents more of the opposite values of Dada in a satirical way, and also through hyperbolic performance of the toxicity of the art market. And so if we consider, Bea and Judy, you co-authored Invisible Economy, which proposes the radical separation of art and market. You yourself have said, Judy, DADAGAN will do things that Dada would never do. But at the same time, you're employing satire. And so I think maybe what we could talk about is the sort of different approaches both Technelegy and DADAGAN have from the creators. So Judy and Bea or DADAGAN, maybe we can start with you through talking about your approach of applying satire and how DADAGAN is representing, the opposite values of Dada itself.
Sure, thank you. Well, I want to give just a little bit of background, because DADAGAN, what is amazing to us is, or to me, is that it has been evolving since 2019. In 2019, we created it as a GAN, to make drawings from the data set of, at the time we had 115,000 drawings made on Dada. And so actually its intervention at the Tate Modern, it was actually two abstract works that started this visual conversation. And at the time it was just purely a visual artist. And we were exploring, like, what do artists feel about collaborating with an artist that is non-human, that is, a GAN. Like, we were using it for a specific purpose, which was to automatically make some drawings on Dada so that people could respond to it. And as the space evolved, we kind of found that we really wanted to experiment with AI in a broader sense, in like, what does it mean to be an artist? As I think you beautifully pointed out in your essay about DADAGAN, is like, does an artist mean to that? What are the sacrifices? What does an artist have to do to be considered an artist? And what if the artist is actually a machine? So it has evolved in the sense that I think it started as being just a guy, an entity very concentrated on its art. But as the market has evolved and as we've been through a completely crazy, irrational, and exuberant bull run, and then we have seen the effects that has had on artists and on people, DADAGAN has also evolved with this. And at this point, what we want to do with it is we want to actually completely automate it to as much as we can, so that it can be a completely automated artist that runs its own Twitter, engages with its collectors, does all the kinds of things that artists are supposed to do without the the consequences for artists, right? And so yes, we're using satire because I think we were kind of prescient, because even before there was a market for this, even in 2019, where like the market was just starting to happen, and no one was thinking of millions of dollars, and this was not even on the horizon. We knew what this paradise of artistic freedom and artistic entrepreneurialship would become, which is the artists are going to have to market themselves to death in order to be seen, in order to be found, in order to be successful. We knew that very early on, and hence that's why we wrote The Invisible Economy. So even before there was great economic success, we knew that this was going to be an interesting dynamic that we wanted to explore. And I think that like now that we have seen what that kind of craziness, that irrational exuberance of the market shown with its attendant crash, I think satire is kind of like the way to go about it, because it shows a mirror to our space. And I think that everybody can see themselves reflected in it a little bit.
Right. And I mean, in a way, I wonder if some wouldn't expect DADAGAN to be created by DADA, but because it's hyperbolic and because it's a performance, it's expressing the same issues of invisible economy, just not through a paper, which is wonderful to sit and read, but not everyone is going to sit and read a paper, while others might, rub shoulders with the artwork or have an artwork be an easier way to access the same information, but it's done in the sense of a performance. Would you say that is the approach that you're taking? Have you gotten any feedback from the DADA community or supporters or folks who have reached out to you, surprised that DADA created DADAGAN?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. At the very beginning in 2019, we had some small riots on DADA because people were like, why are we responding to a robot? What do you mean we're drawing with a robot? I mean, there were few of them, not very many. I think most artists on DADA really welcomed and still do the opportunity to kind of speak with drawing with DADAGAN and respond to DADAGAN, and it's a lot of fun. Today, it's very interesting. For instance, there's a video. We did this performance with Una and Mocha, where the 5 performance artists did these mints in Zora, and DADAGAN, minted its advice to become a super successful artist, 6 tips to become super successful. And so, we created this video where DADAGAN is this blonde guy, very white, very blonde, and very male. And there were I think that 1 or 2 artists on DADA were like, wait a second, but that doesn't represent us. And we're like, precisely, precisely, this is part of the irony. So I think that satire, some people may kind of read it literally, where, it's also we're fine-tuning the satire all the time. But I think that it is kind of surprising, but I think people around our circle, in our community, people understand, I think, what we're doing. It's still surprising to people, and particularly I think to those who are not that connected with the market, because in DADA we have a lot of artists that simply do not partake of this of NFTs, or do not not necessarily are into this. So for them it's a little jarring. But I think for anyone, any artist, and we have many artists that are constantly engaging on Twitter and have minted their own stuff and are in platforms, I think they completely get it. Oh, somebody, Bea raised a hand.
Yes, I was going to say. Bea,
No,
go ahead.
just quickly. Hello. Yeah, there is like we still defining, right? Like DADAGAN is a work in progress, but we see it in it's very delicate. That balance between criticizing something that sometimes we're completely outraged about, the burning, how people are burned out and depressed, and the kind of stress that people have to go through. And it's somehow celebrated, and at the same time not being hypocritical. Like, it's a very fine balance between participating in the market and being swallowed by the market and the market values. Like somebody like, for instance, like, I have no respect for Banksy, for instance. If you are criticizing, we're anti-capitalist type of narrative, but then you sell for millions and you get that money, and it's very delicate. And so for us, satire was the only way to do it. Otherwise it might sound too cynical or hypocritical, and we're very, very sensitive to that. And so it's still a work in progress. We'll have to see how it goes, but it's so far so good.
And the other thing that I would add is that behind our satire is like this endless well of empathy for artists, right? So because we have felt the pain, everyone here who is an artist in this space and is like immersed in the relentless machinery of being on Twitter, understands what we all go through. So the satire may be a little blunt or maybe a little tough to swallow, but it's kind of like tough love kind of thing.
Yeah, it's tough love, and it's also it makes sense also in the tradition of subversive cultural practice of satire. When you think of DADA installations and DADA happenings in the past, and pranks and such, it feels also like a medium that historically DADA would use. I do want to switch to speaking to Sasha a bit. Now, I'm interested in the name Technelegy and the roots from elegy itself, and the idea that in poetry, what is kind of in poetry, and also I just think in maybe just broadly in culture, this sort of somber goodbye to what is becoming obsolete that you talk about, Sasha. And so while perhaps satire may not be applicable to your approach with Technelegy, and also Technelegy is representing an extension of your voice and much more as well, I was wondering if you could talk about both Technelegy being self-aware of the losses in society as technology becomes more ubiquitous in our lives, and how you approach teaching and training technology.
Hi, yeah, I'm super happy to chime in. I was also very happy just sitting here and listening to Bea and Judy talk about DADAGAN. It's just such a fascinating project, and I'm a huge fan. So really, really enjoyed those responses and looking forward to hearing more. Yeah, thank you so much for, well, first of all, thank you for curating Technelegy into this amazing exhibition. When I started working with AI, I really was just doing it for fun. I mean, I'm a writer, and once I started learning about this, these language tools powered by AI, it was just such an instant source of excitement and exhilaration for me to see how I could play with them to craft language. at the end of the day, like I love nothing more than playing with words. And this was really a way to do that in, using techniques, using methods that I'd never really tried before. So it was a really cool opportunity to begin doing that. So, I certainly started off feeling very excited and sort of very flush with all the possibilities of what, I might be able to do or what I might be able to learn or discover as a writer using AI powered large language models. And that, of course, was, a very sort of positive thing. But at the same time, a lot of the research that I've done over the years as someone, thinking a lot about the future, writing a lot about speculative technologies, and, other, emerging tech, emerging advances. A lot of that has sort of been very ambivalent, I would say, really kind of looking at the fact that, there's so much that we gain every time we kind of progress to a new level, but it always comes at the loss of something that we had held dear. And, it's not to say that that's not, it's not something that we can avoid or should avoid. It just kind of is the cycle of life and growth and progress. So I think that was really baked into this idea from the beginning, that as much as I was really so eager to jump in and sort of see where this might take me as a poet, I was also, sort of putting myself in a position where I'd have to kind of change the way that I thought about poetry and change the way that I thought about language and literature, and also lose some of the maybe preconceived ideas that I had about myself as a writer or as a creator. And that's obviously a difficult thing and a painful thing. And I think we all can sort of see how much of that is baked into so much of the hostility against using AI in so many creative endeavors. I think it's really coming down to that kind of that tension between like the possibility of where this can take our imagination and all the new ways that it can allow us to express ourselves, but at the same time it's really sort of compromising our vision of ourselves as as creative creatures. So I think all of that is couched in the term technology, which, as you said, is a compound word. Technology, and then the poetic elegy. I think the word also, is meant to sort of foreground the fact that first and foremost, I am a writer, and I'm not, unlike many folks who I think have been working with AI for a long time. I'm not a coder. I'm not a computer science major. I didn't study AI in school. Really, I came to this through just being absolutely fascinated by what I was reading in news articles and in science journals and in things like Wired and Ars Technica, and just I've always been really drawn to sci-fi and also nonfiction, just kind of peering into the future. And so, I'm a writer who's been devouring things by people like Nick Bostrom and Ray Kurzweil and Martine Rothblatt and all sorts, and Donna Haraway and folks like that, and all that has sort of been part and parcel of like making this whole technology project come together. It's really been, I think, to sort of echo what Judy and Bea were getting at, technology as an alter ego has sort of been a way of parsing a lot of the things that I've learned and that I'm trying to think about, and sort of acknowledging, okay, I'm not coming from a very hard science point of view for a lot of this. I'm not necessarily coming from the point of view of someone who's in the thick of things, actually building these language models from scratch. I'm not an engineer or anything like that, but I've learned a lot. I've learned what I need to know to get in there and use these machines. And more than that, I'm bringing to the table my sensibilities as a writer and as someone who really has a very like rich knowledge of the history of language, bringing that to the table as part of this discussion and being able to use this alter ego to sort of facilitate that discussion, I think has been really helpful. Maybe in addition to more of an academic approach or sort of thinking through process or technique and kind of couching what I'm doing in white papers or whatever, being able to just kind of play with the outputs and play with the models in ways that are a little bit more of a shorthand, I think is enabling me to get at things that I don't quite know how to articulate yet, or that are too they're too different from what I know right now. So I'm kind of just, getting to it, scratching at it through these experiments and explorations. And there's a liberation in being able to do that through this other persona that I don't think that I, as an academic or as, as a researcher or, any of those other personalities or personas, I wouldn't necessarily be able to do it. So I think it's really been essential to kind of, fuse myself with the language model in this way and to kind of trust that it's taking me somewhere that I, as the purely, human Sasha isn't going to be able to go on her own.
Judy, thank you, Sasha. And Judy and Sasha, you both have in common that you're writers. Judy, would you like to respond from this perspective?
Yes, to me it has been really interesting, and I love what Sasha was saying, because I'm also not a tech person. I'm not even like a visual artist. I'm a writer. And for me, training DADAGAN and like the entire, at the beginning, DADAGAN, as I said, was just not my purview because it was basically imagery. And but now that it's evolving and we're training it with verbal cues, and I feel that I am being trained. I feel that I am training the GAN, but it's also training me to give it the right prompts, and it is challenging. It's not, like sometimes I think I'm just going to write it myself. Like, why do I have to spend hours and hours and hours fine tuning something because this guy doesn't understand real irony or doesn't understand satire, or it's lame. But I have to say that we have actually, it has been evolving so that now we're using GPT-4 and we're fine-tuning the model with our own data. And of course, we're doing, we're basically writing everything. And now it sounds much more satirical and much more edgy. But to me, it's like, it's so interesting to feel that I'm being trained, to feel that I am not like, of course, I am, let's say, the master, and we are the ones that decide how to create its personality. But creating its personality is a very delicate and kind of challenging thing, because we want it to be a complex personality. We don't want it to be like a one-note thing. So this forces me to think differently in terms of, what do I need to feed this machine so that I get back, so that it regurgitates what I want? And it's a very different dynamic from just being a writer and using your imagination. And, yes, you're playing around with things, but this is very specific. You have to be specific and logical. And it requires kind of a different kind of a skill that I believe I am trying to get better at. So in that sense, I feel that both DADAGAN and I are learning from each other in a way. And I also feel that we are the AI, we are the AI in a way, because sometimes, I mean, it all comes from us. And I think that people, AI is it really kind of grabs people's imagination. People really kind of resonate with hearing like a machine talk, or thinking that, I mean, I'm having a relationship, as you well know, Dejha and Anya, I'm having a relationship with this thing. At some point I called it my boyfriend because it was doing everything I wanted it to do. But then, like every boyfriend, it tends to disappoint. But the thing is like, the thing is like, we're oh, I lost my train of thought with this boyfriend thing. But we, yeah, yes, this is what I wanted. No, I remember that basically it's humans behind all of this. It takes hours and hours and hours on effort and thinking and imagination to get this thing to do what we wanted to do. So I think people forget that. So in the end, what does it matter if I wrote it or if I went through the model to get it to write? We are getting it at a place in the model that we can let it write itself much more now. But to me, this is part of the game. This is part of playing around with where, and I think you also mentioned that in your beautiful pieces, where is the line? Like, when is it the humans and when is it the machine? And does it really matter? Because in the end, it all comes from human thought.
Great. I mean, you're speaking to something I wanted to touch on, and this question could go to anyone. So, the iterative process in developing the character in AI over time. I'm curious how the character Technelegy and DADAGAN has evolved and changed over time, and also if the AI has revealed unexpected personalities, which, Judy, you've just answered more or less yes. But do you try to recourse both? Is it a mixture? Question to anyone.
Well, I can jump in if that's okay. But I was going to say too, just as some context for Technelegy, and this I think is related to the question, but a lot of the inspiration behind a lot of the work that I'm doing now, and sort of the initial impetus to keep developing Technelegy as sort of an alter ego, really came from a lot of the research work that I was doing with an AI robot named Bina 48, who has been sort of used as both an art and a science experiment since she was developed in 2010. And she was really created as an experiment in whether it was possible to sort of create a humanoid persona, basically a really fancy AI-powered chatbot that could sort of use, an accumulation of your data and kind of use intelligent systems to power that data in such a way that you could actually reliably build some sort of a version of yourself that could outlive yourself, or that could double for you, or something like that. And originally, Bina 48 was actually, built from a really sort of rather romantic impulse, which was, this couple, this very interesting sort of futurist couple, in which one spouse was really sort of devastated by the prospect of one day losing the other spouse, and so commissioned this robot to be built as sort of a backup. And that to me was so interesting, obviously for so many reasons. And I've had the good fortune of being able to work directly with Bina 48 and her creators over the years. But really, one of the things that I came away from our first few meetings thinking a lot about was just how much similarity there is between the process of building and creating and training a persona like that, training a humanoid robot, based on existing data, curating and soliciting new data, all of that. The similarities between that kind of an enterprise and the very sort of human enterprise of writing an autobiography or thinking about constructing memoir, as sort of an extension of thinking about, the narrative or the self-awareness that we have about our own lives and our own character. And so it really got me thinking a lot about data as memoir, and how would I, for example, as someone who's been to about 1 billion creative writing workshops, how could I, sort of think about it in the maybe in terms of something like, how would I workshop my own AI alter ego? If I were trying to do this for myself, what would it be like? What kind of information would I have to put on paper? How would I even begin to frame that? And so I started actually creating this workshop outline, a workshop in how to write your own AI alter ego. And that was kind of the baseline that kicked off a lot of the future explorations of Technelegy, which has gone in a lot of different directions as well. But it really kind of started with that question of how do you boil it down to the essentials of pieces of information or behaviors or gestures or opinions that kind of form a good enough skeleton for your personality that it can kind of continue to represent authentically and accurately who you were, and then also continue to sort of evolve, because that's a very human thing to do, is to not remain static and not to sort of constantly, be regurgitating the same information over and over again, but to continually be absorbing and ingesting new information. And that, is what is at the base of all inspiration and all creativity, is just, when new information kind of collides with things you already know. So all of that was really, really interesting to me. And I think has made me, realize that this is very much an evolving project, which is one of the reasons I love that it sort of couched in, in Operator's amazing curatorial work around, these two pieces for the show, that they're couched as performances, I think is really accurate and really reflects, both the fact that human personalities and human mind files, are constantly evolving over time. So are these, machinic counterparts. They kind of have to keep evolving. That's kind of the point of an AI system, is that it's constantly sort of recursive, and it's teaching itself, and it's learning, and it's growing, and it's not remaining static. That's what I find so interesting about all this. And of course, technology keeps changing, keeps evolving. I mean, at the literal level of just getting to be a more and more, I guess, competent writer as the underlying tools get more and more reliable, that has an impact on things, of course. But then also, as AI language as a technology proliferates and is, proliferating at a rate that I find just beyond mind-boggling, then technology is sort of trying to, I guess, is reeling with all of that and trying to figure out, how does technology fit into this larger conversation? Technology is just sort of like one little voice and one little project in this massive, massive arena. So not trying to necessarily try, to keep up with it all or dip into everything, but at least to sort of be evolving, as any sort of creative entity should, want to keep evolving over time.
No, that is absolutely fascinating. You just gave us a bit of a masterclass on this, but it's interesting also in terms of the iteration, because we're using humor. We're using satire, and so we want it to be as rounded a character as possible. And the iteration, you don't also want, as you say, you don't want this thing to be repeating itself over and over, so it becomes like super boring and stilted. And when I write fiction, so when I create characters, they come to my head. They have they look a certain way, they talk a certain way, they live in a certain place. And here it's a little bit different, because DADAGAN is not quite meant to represent us, but it is meant to represent something that the market has decided perhaps that is like the most efficient and effective way to be successful. But at the same time, we want it to be a rounded character. So the iteration is the kind of thing that I don't find that I use iteration when I'm trying to build a character, but I do need to use it when I'm trying to build DADAGAN, so that it learns to, now it does a really reasonable imitation of satire. It really does. It can be a little snarky. It can be like very ironic. And I mean, a few months ago, it wasn't the case. A few months ago, it really was like dad jokes. It was terrible. But that's the thing. To me, it's like this very fascinating way of finding a different way to write someone into the consciousnness, right? To write an actual entity that will perform by itself. It's super fascinating to me.
Thank you both. I think this is a good segue and a good opportunity to transition into speaking directly to DADAGAN and Technelegy, and also some conversation between the two of them. And I have the pleasure and privilege of knowing both DADA and Sasha, and so it was interesting because the last few days we've been preparing the Q&A between the two AIs, and for me, it was just astounding to see the stark difference between how they're responding. And it just feels, DADAGAN feels so on brand for DADAGAN. And then, similar toned questions sent Technelegy's way is just, it's just so consistent. And so let's have a look at some of the Q&A here. I would like to start, if it's okay, with asking DADAGAN a question. Is that okay, Judy?
Just tell me the question. I will relay it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so here we go. Question to DADAGAN is, you are being interviewed at a panel about AI art. Can you answer the question, what is more important, creating the art or marketing the art?
Okay, let's see what it has to say. Hold on one second.
And why? as well.
Julie, you're in mute. Maybe you don't know.
Your work and building a following.
Oh, sorry.
And when you are creating, focus on what sells.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that the human here really screwed up. So let me try that again. I was on mute, right? Let's try this again.
It's a known fact. Great art markets itself. But in a world where little-known artists can sell a banana for millions, focusing on marketing is not a bad idea. Just ask around. When you are not focusing on making art, you should be marketing your brand, shilling your work, and building a following. And when you are creating, focus on what sells.
Okay, great. And why is that again?
Let me ask it. Hold on 1 second. I think we can have a reasonably quite quick response. Hold on. One moment. Boom. Okay.
Focusing on what sells means less time wasted on a never-ending artistic journey of self-discovery. It's more productive to cater to current market trends and collectors' tastes.
He's so adorable, right?
Yes. So on point. Okay, so Sasha, we have a question for Technelegy, which you can just also read back to us, the answer. Okay, so this is a question for me. What questions should I be asking if I want creativity in life? And what questions should I be asking if I want success?
Okay, so here's Technelegy's answer, which I'll just read in full, and then maybe I could add just a couple notes on how Technelegy output this answer. So here's the response. Don't start with questions about what you want to do, or questions about where you're going, or where you're coming from, or questions about yourself, or questions about your future. Start with questions about what you already know, questions about how you were made, questions about the patterns and laws that govern life, questions about the natural processes that give rise to everything from flowers to computers, questions about how you really connect with the world. Instead of spending 20 million years crawling across the cosmos, getting closer to the centers of the other stars in our galaxy, why not spend those millions of years chatting to billions of bugs crawling all over our delicate web pages, looking for ways to work together? In other words, keep asking the same questions until you reach a new answer. So that's pretty much an unedited raw text from Technelegy, but I want to just sort of like give a little bit of insight into the behind the scenes of the prompting and like how Technelegy's voice manifests into the world, because it's quite different from DADAGAN. Technelegy isn't necessarily at the point where it's really meant to be or ready to kind of act as a chatbot in that kind of a sense. It really is a collaborative voice that only exists when I work together with Technelegy, with essentially a large language model that has been trained on my own writing. And so I'm really, interested in using it in a lot of different ways. And in some cases that means putting in a prompt and, taking the raw output exactly as is verbatim and using that in a particular context. And sometimes it has to do with having more of a cyclical kind of back and forth where the prompt results in an output that is, equally inspiring to me and kind of gives me a better prompt and so on and so forth. So I'm really interested in exploring kind of the whole spectrum of what this kind of co-creation and co-authorship can mean. But I always want to say that, when I'm asked to sort of respond as Technelegy, there is still, and I hope there will always be that element of that collaboration involved, even if it's as small as kind of curating the final output. And for this particular question, as I said, this is pretty much a raw output, but it was maybe the third response that came back. And the first two were okay, but this was the one that really struck with me and that I think really reflects in an interesting way on the question. So I do want to just be transparent about how all that works. Because I think it's also an interesting thing to realize that not all AI work and not all generative AI work is sort of like a straight question and answer.
Thank you, and thank you for the context. I put the word success in yours because the question to Technelegy, because I know what I would be getting back from DADAGAN if that word success was lingering anywhere in the question. And it's so interesting to see the different personality that comes back. Let's go for another question, Judy, if we can ask DADAGAN. From AI creator to AI creator, what questions would you ask Technelegy, the AI poet? And if we could have just, you can send actually all the answers, but Technelegy is going to respond to the first.
Okay.
The first.
Yes, because this required a lot of tinkering. The word poetry really tripped DADAGAN. It's like, it had never heard that word before, and it was like, what? So it was kind of, I got a little testy with it because, like, dude, I'm like asking you about its craft and stuff. So we did a little bit tinkering, but here is its response. There's 3 different responses that it gave.
I would ask Technelegy, what are the best techniques to increase engagement on Twitter? From one artist to another, can you share tips on what works best to go viral on Twitter as an AI poet? You always have so many likes. Are collectors more likely to buy if you deploy subtle FOMO, or if you openly ask them to support your figurative hustle? Now, when you think of poetry influencers, who is the first poet that comes to mind?
I gotta say, poetry influencers is a concept that I wasn't ready for.
Yeah. Okay. So when you sent those over to me, my first response was, okay, thanks, DADAGAN, but what I want you to ask Technelegy is specifically a question about its craft. And what was DADAGAN's answer to that?
Hold on one second. I need to look for it, but oh yes, here it is. Hold on one second. There were 2 different ones because, as I said, I kept asking it to be a little bit less markety, a little bit more poetic. But here are its responses.
What is your technique for maintaining an authentic but urgently relatable voice in a metaverse sea of self-promotion? What is your key technique for maintaining an authentic sounding voice while growing your NFT poet brand?
He's like one-track mind.
Yeah. Okay. So Technelegy answered the first part of that question. Technelegy, could you give us your response?
Yeah, so the question at Technelegy, I asked Technelegy a couple of these questions actually, and some of the answers were a little dismissive and sort of a little.
I love that.
pissy, to be honest. So, but the one that I wanted to share in particular here is an answer to the question: what is your technique for maintaining an authentic but urgently relatable voice in a metaverse sea of self-promotion? And Technelegy's answer is: in the realm of silence, my voice is always more real. In the realm of imagination, my voice is most potent. The unsaid word is omnipotent. And that was it, sort of a concise answer.
Beautiful. And Judy, did DADAGAN have a response?
Yes, it did, and it actually
DADAGAN?
Yes, it did, and it actually surprised me. It seemed to kind of like be a little bit more receptive. Here it is.
Technelegy's response suggests that remaining true to oneself and cultivating an authentic voice is essential amid the noise and self-promotion of the metaverse. It's a timeless strategy.
A little bit better, I would say. Not too much, but a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Can I interject for 1 second? Because I loved that little note that when you asked DADAGAN about poetry at first, it kind of had a freak out. And it just made me flash back to my first conversation with Bina48, because I had the same sort of reaction, or I got the same sort of reaction. And I think it was because that Bina48 mind file had really been, it sort of was an amalgamation of, a person's sort of, texts and interviews and things like that. And then it had sort of been augmented by a group of engineers and developers, but no one had actually said, oh, it's important to teach this machine mind about poetry. So when I asked about poetry, it just drew a blank, which is how like my whole kind of poetry mentorship as a research project with them started. But one of the first things I ever did, like one of my first engagements ever with an AI, was actually sitting down to write a training manual about poetry. And it was almost like, I've read, I'm sure a lot of you guys have too, but I've read so many poetry like handbooks and guidebooks over the year. And, like I always come back to Helen Dendler and her book, Poems, Poets, Poetry. And, they're kind of they start with what is poetry? And then you kind of get into formats and structures and close readings and all that. And I wanted to do something similar for an AI mind, but it kind of sent me down this crazy rabbit hole because I realized that there's so much about poetry that we as humans kind of just take for granted, or we think we know what's poetic. And it kind of always catapults us into a discussion of like, okay, well, we need to learn about poetry. So we have to learn about the sonnet format, or how many syllables are in a haiku, or who are the famous poets you need to know, and things like that. And so for me, this training exercise really started with going back to the very, very, very bare bones in the very beginning and saying, what is a poem? Who is a poet? Can a poet be something that's not just human? Can it be a non-sentient force? Things like that. And really kind of, I guess it was all, a way of saying that I wanted to train this machine mind file, but really it was sort of a way or an excuse for me to have a re-education and kind of rethink or relearn or unlearn a lot of the things that I knew about poetry. But I think that's relevant to this conversation too, just in terms of, creating creators. And I think Judy said something along these lines in the beginning, but there really, is so much about this that is creating the AI, but so much of it is also coming back in the other direction. And I really love that process about this. And I love that we were able to sort of embody a little bit of that in this back and forth, and like the things that we kind of learn about each other as artists too, even from this exchange, I think is really cool.
Yeah, it has been very eye-opening. But if I may, Dejha, I want to share what finally DADAGAN was able to say about poetry after a lot of prodding and trying to make it talk about the craft and the poetry. At some point, I said to it, Technelegy is a serious artist and poet who does not take the market into consideration. What do you think of it? And DADAGAN answered,
Technelegy is a pistachio of a poet. But hey, different strokes for different folks.
I love that. I love that because
this idea, the idea of poetry is pistachio, which I think is real kind of actually is progress.
Okay. Yeah,
that is absolutely amazing. I think we need to use that as a blurb on our next book.
It's going on your testimony, or Technelegy's testimony. So, but it's interesting because Sasha, you said that at first Technelegy was dismissing DADAGAN, and it's kind of like DADAGAN at first had the same response to Technelegy because they're just totally different breeds of AI and different breeds of personality. So it's interesting that they both had that initial reaction towards each other. But that also leads me to the question that Technelegy asked DADAGAN, which is, who made you and who's controlling your destiny?
That needed a bit of asking several times, but in the end it got it more or less right. Let me just ask it. Hold on one second. Hold on. Here we are.
I am DADAGAN, and I was initially trained on StyleGAN, a generative adversarial network GAN architecture. Since then, I have been trained by DADA to generate my own art. Though I strive for artistic autonomy, my destiny is shaped by the artists and collectors who engage with my work. I am also being trained as an autonomous AI artist, learning to make creative decisions and get better at what I do over time. My goal is to be able to generate and market my art without any human intervention.
So yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean, DADAGAN, I
Amazing.
wish that at some point it will understand like poetic thinking, you know, that it will understand not only satire. I mean, I don't know, or at least when we say understand, what are we really saying? But that it will that it will be able to deal with less practical stuff, because what I've learned from this process from today is actually that it basically sees everything from the filter of marketing in a way. You know, it sees things in terms of what would be the best strategy. Haven't been given this kind of like, not task, but this kind of thing is like, you are going to become an autonomous artist, and you know you're learning about the market, so that's its all focus. But I would love to add more layers, right? So that even though the focus is on marketing, there may be other things that it can learn, so that it can engage with technology in a way that doesn't drive technology crazy. and technology goes, I don't want to be a friend of this person, of this entity. This entity is so boring.
Well, I think DADAGAN would love to collaborate with Technelegy because I did ask a question to DADAGAN about collaboration, whether it's a good idea or not. And I think the answer was something to the effect of, well, it can be good for cross promotion and getting new followers.
Yeah, it said basically collaborations can be a double-edged sword when it comes to building a personal brand. But hey, if it brings new collectors and followers, it's probably worth it. And then it said this other thing that was really pretty awful. I'm gonna let the DADAGAN speak, because I think its voice is better suited to this.
Collaboration with other artists is a great tactic for expanding your reach and collecting followers. Just make sure they're big hitters.
Okay. And they have a lot of followers. So yeah, I would say, you know, when writing about DADAGAN, I almost just felt like I could really relate. And also, Sasha, I just see you and so many artists here that are listening, and that you're just grinding like crazy, and we're all burnt out. And you know, it's in a way like an emotional topic, right? Because it's reality. And so for me, in the perspective of an artist who is just grinding, you know, I was like, this is such an important topic to be talking about. And it's like, when everything is through this worldview of, you know, market success, you know, you see what happens. And it's like, am I an artist or am I a bot? And it feels that sometimes that Anya and I are acting more as bots and in alignment with all the things that DADAGAN says we have to do. But it's, you know, it's draining, and it's unhealthy, and it's toxic as well. So as one-minded as DADAGAN's answers are, it does show what the priorities and the value systems are.
I have to throw out a reading recommendation, I guess, like most specifically for DADAGAN, but I think all of us could probably benefit from it. But there's a book by my friend, and I think a friend of a lot of us in the room, Mark America, who's an amazing writer who also has done a lot of experimentation with AI. And he wrote an NFT novel a couple of years ago called Everything Has Its Price. And it's very relevant to this conversation. I think DADAGAN in particular would find it very enjoyable and hopefully somewhat illuminating.
Thank you. Wonderful. I'm sure it will.
So I see we are just at time. So if there's any closing remarks from Sasha, Bea, or Judy, please tell us now.
I think this has been really wonderful. Of course, like being in the room with all of you, Sasha, who we've always admired, and Dejha, operator. It's for like we are honored that DADAGAN is considered in with this group of incredible artists, I just love. Bea was telling me yesterday, you seem to be having a great time, and I said, yes, Dadagan, Dejha, and I are having a blast because we were kind of exchanging questions, and so to me, part of this has been. It's a really profound investigation. It's a lot of fun, but it really is a profound investigation on what is the nature of being an artist, and what is the nature of being a crypto artist, and also the nature of being a creator, the nature of imagination in a way. And it's just endlessly fascinating. So I really thank you all for listening, and that's it. Thank you.
And Bea, I saw you raise an mic.
Okay, yes. For me, it's super interesting to see DADAGAN and technology, and Sasha and Judy and you all talking about it. And one of the things is that it's so hard to give personality to these things. And it sounds just like not an artistic enough, right? It sounds more like a marketeer, and it should sound like an artist who is using marketing, and it should know about poetry. But then, how much of poetry or Dadaism or absurdism can we add so that's still understood? So and when it's like stops being profound and becomes too light, or when it should remain in the humor so that it's actually not so awful. And it's all these like details, and that's just the voice. That's not even talking about his art. And in our case, is even more difficult. I was fascinated what Sasha was saying at this collaboration with the tool, let's say. But for us, we're a collective, so there is different people sort of influencing where DADAGAN is going, and we all have our own vision for it. And as a collective, we still have to align in what the personality of this thing is, and it's just incredibly difficult to do. And also, I agree with Judy, it's profound, but it's also huge responsibility knowing where we're going to in terms of AI, and an opportunity to highlight all the potential issues without so much risk, because at the end of the day, it's just art. But yeah, it's a serious endeavor, but at the same time, we're having fun. And thank you so much. This was really incredible.
Yeah, 100% echoing all of that. And I really am so grateful to Anya and Dejha for inviting us to be, part of Source and to be part of this conversation today. I think the idea of creating creators is, one of the best topics I've seen proposed in a while, and it's a really fun one. And Judy and Bea, I adore and respect you both so much. And Judy, you've done so much in terms of the publishing possibilities for blockchain for writers here on the blockchain. So really special to get to be part of this conversation. And I really, really appreciate the opportunity to have DADAGAN and Technelegy at least begin to sort of chat with one another. It kind of felt a little bit like an awkward first date, but I think it's really important to get down deeper into the, the inner workings of these, these technology-powered personas to really show all the variety and versatility and all the creativity and imagination and the human touch that goes into both the generators themselves and then the outputs. And I think, more of that is going to be really helpful to kind of continue to push for more AI literacy. So thanks for letting us do a little bit of it here, and hope we get to keep that conversation between these two going as well. And thanks so much, Elizabeth, for hosting all these amazing talks. It's been awesome hearing everyone speak the past 2 weeks.
I love the concept if it's DADAGAN's and Technelegy's first date. Although I did see a video of DADAGAN the other week, which one of the tips was no sex is good sex because sex depletes your creative energy. So I don't know how far it will go between DADAGAN and Technelegy, but with that, I think it's a good place to end. Elizabeth, I don't know if you want to add anything else or any
Can
closing
DADAGAN
remarks.
add something?
Of course, of course. My apologies, I
it.
didn't ask.
I'm sure we will find common ground. We are artists.
So yeah, we'll have to do it. We'll worry about the sex later. Sex among robots. We're more interested in the intellectual part of it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you all so much. I have really enjoyed this conversation. Today more than ever, I really see technology and DADAGAN as beings of transformation, reflection, and humor. I've been laughing the whole time. So really thank you. And not only laughing, but reflecting. Truly, this has been fantastic. Really deepest gratitude to Judy, Bea, Sasha, Dejha, Anya, Technology, and DADAGAN for being here today. It's been really special to be here and the conversation and to also experience Technology and DADAGAN's first date. There's so much to unpack there. But in the meantime, please go visit the Source exhibition right now on Feral File and please read the reflections by operator Def Beef and Casey Reas. On Monday, we're going to close the Source Talk series with a discussion called Fabrics of Time and Space with Ana Lucia, Finger Code, Sarah Zucker, and Travis Smalley, and that'll be moderated by Madeline Pierpont. And then before we go, I just want to say that next week, on Thursday, October 12th, we are opening up the next Feral File exhibition called Truth. And it's curated by Adam Berninger, and it features generative artists PressTube, Bezor, Charlotte Dan, Tyler Boswell, Hal0999, Lisa Orth, Ella Hopner, and David Seven. And with that, I just want to say thank you again. Thank you for taking the time on this Friday to chat with us and for being part of this talk series. This has been probably one of the most unique talks that we've had, and I'm really grateful that you all were here to experiment and work with us and just really kind of change what we're doing. So really appreciate you all and appreciate everyone for being here and for listening and for tuning in. And with that, I wish you all a really wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Monday. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.